So, definitely been around a little bit. Coming to Olympus, what I love about the cameras is the size of the cameras. To me, they're like little toys, right? And all this computational stuff they've been putting in the last few years, it just makes me want to play more. So I love bringing them with me everywhere, and I've been shooting more than ever since coming to Olympus. So a lot of fun. It brought the fun back to photography, and I really enjoy these. So they are like computers now. They're not like our old cameras in the film days. So this kind of a class usually will help to hopefully give you some insight onto the menu, sort of. So the idea of this class, you guys, is basically to show you how I set up my camera. So it's like, I just got an Olympus camera. What do I do now? I can't believe the menu when I press the button. Where do I go from here? And so I'll probably go off on a few tangents, and I'll probably get, I may confuse you a little bit, so we'll go a little bit slower. But basically the idea is that if you can walk away a little more comfortable with your camera, you can revisit this on the YouTube channel with Kenmore. And you can also just feel, again, a little more comfortable, maybe walk away with 2 or 3 points that you didn't know or change things. But what I'm going to do is I'm not going to go through the big menu, piece by piece and line by line. That's like a 3-hour class. What I'll do is I'll go through and sort of hit what I change when I go through the menu and why I change it. And there's a few things that I'll skip over because I'll show you the super control panel as well, and how a lot of the items in the menu you can get to quickly from the super control panel, which is basically like a quick menu on the cameras. And so I'll do that. I will use the EM1 Mark III camera. It's our newest pro camera, aside from the EM1X. Those are both our pro cameras. The menu's similar to all I can't talk, but it's similar to all the cameras in the current lineup, the 10 Mark IV, the EM5 III, of course, EM1 III, and then EM1X. It will trickle down to the other cameras. Like I said in the beginning, the EM10 series is a tad different. A couple of the buttons are different, and there's not as much in that menu system. So bear with me a little bit. And if I have time, I could plug in a 10 at the end and sort of show you the differences. But basically, I'm going to go ahead and get started with this, and so we can go, because to be honest, an hour is not a lot of time to do this. And so hopefully I can get you guys, situated with this whole thing. So what you're going to see when I turn on is basically you're going to see the menu pop up on the screen here. So right now you should see what my camera sees. I have a cap on my camera, so you have a black screen with some flashing numbers, right? Yeah, as far as the EM10 and me identifying, just sort of bear with me, because as you go through the menu, you'll know on your EM10 if it has it or not. The other cameras are going to have much more robust menu systems, but your super control panel and things like that will be very much the same. So bear with me as you see me go through this. All right, so here's my EM13 menu. Now, what I'm also going to do is I'm going to show you guys a picture-in-picture here. So you should see my camera in the corner, and you should be able to see my hand moving around here as I talk. So hopefully that helps a little bit. Now I'm going to try to keep an eye on some of the questions as I go, but it's going to be a little tough because I'm looking the other way. So I may have to hit some of those at the end, but I'll try to glance over as I go a little bit here. So bear with me. So basically you get this camera, right? So I come home and I got this nice new camera, and I'm looking at it and I'm going, holy cow, there's buttons everywhere. What do I do? And some of the buttons on your camera, like this EM13 here, you have a button here, a button here. You have your record button over here for your video. There's all these little buttons. Some are labeled like ISO over here. These are called function buttons. You can actually change these buttons. You can assign them to other functions than what they're assigned to out of the box. And I will show you that as I go through the menu. But I just want to mention where they are on the camera, because sometimes we look at the camera, we don't really, see or understand what they are. So basically what I'm going to be using here a lot is I'm going to use my OK button here in the back of the camera. I'm going to use my arrow pad around the OK button, and I'm probably going to use my rear dial and my front dial. And that's basically all I'm really going to use to get through the menu. I'm also going to use the button called Info, which is underneath your OK button there. So let's go ahead and start. I mean, the first thing I do when I pull the camera out of the box, obviously you charge it up and you get it going, right? What I'm going to do is put it in manual on the top mode dial, and that's going to allow me to see everything basically in the menu, whether I use the super control panel or whether I use the main menu. Now, the first thing I do is I hit menu on the back of the camera. On the EM13, it's over to the left over here. I have a 10.4 next to me over here just to kind of go through the 10 a little bit because it's a little different. But your menu there is above the OK button and to the left. So your menu is over here. So just look for the menu button and press that. And if this disappears, by the way, I'll press it again as I'm talking. It might disappear on me. But this brings up our big menu, right? And we look at this and we go, holy cow, look at the size of this menu. What is in there? There's everything, you know? And I'll be quite honest with you guys. I'm a very simple shooter. I don't change a lot of this stuff, but there's things you can change. You can customize in the Olympus, and that's actually a good thing. A lot of people do look at the menu and they get very confused, or they say, gee, there's so much here. It's like, I can't figure it out. But the reality is you don't have to change too much. And you can use your quick menu later, your super control panel, to get to most things once you set the camera up. And so that's sort of the reality of it. Now, there are people that like to really, really customize their menu. And for those, they can do that in this system. And that's why there is this stuff, you know, available for you to go ahead and customize. So what I'm going to do is make sure I'm over to the left with my arrow pad. I'm going to go all the way up now to the top, which is the shooting menu 1. And it's got a camera, a little picture of a camera with a 1. And so what I'm going to see over here is a few different things in that section. Now, the only thing I'm going to get into right now is I'm going to let you know that there's a reset there. So reset, and if you have custom modes, it'll say custom mode. Reset is good to know because you can always do a full or a basic reset. And if you notice, it's telling me what it does. You know, basic is basically resetting my basic shooting functions, and full is resetting basically everything except for the date. It's kind of like going back to mostly to factory settings. So if you ever get in a bind, you don't know what you have turned on, you can't figure out how to change something on the camera, you can always do a quick basic reset or something to bring it back to sort of the beginning stages. But I just wanted to show that. Now, some of this stuff, as I go through, like for instance, am I shooting in RAW or JPEG or whatever, I'm not going to mess with that yet. I'm going to show you that in the super control panel later because it's easier to get to. So some of this stuff, aspect ratio, all that, I can get to in the super control panel. So I'm going to skip that. I'm just going to leave this the way it is. I'm going to go down to number 2. And this menu has your bracketing functions. It has your high res shot if you're on one of the 1 series or the EM5 series, live ND shooting. So it's just some of the different modes that you have. So I'm going to skip that while I'm setting it up. Movie for me, I basically leave. I don't do much video. So for me, in the beginning, I do skip that. And there's a lot of things you can situate in your super control panel for basic movie settings, whether you're going to Cinema 4K or whether you're doing 4K or high def or what have you. Playback, I also leave. Really where the meat and potatoes are for me when I'm setting up the camera is getting into the gear menu or the custom menu. I call it the gear menu because it has what looks like a gear over on the left there. Hey, let me just check here. So David, a quick question. He says, what resources are available for a deeper dive into the complete menu system? The complete menu system, I've done that class. There's a few things I skipped. Maybe I don't know them or I don't use them. And it's been a 3-hour class. So it's a very long class. We're probably going to start having some of that stuff on our YouTube channel for Olympus or OM system. You're going to start seeing more and more of that. So be on the lookout for that kind of a class. There might be something already on online that you can find. You can get on our Learn Center on Get Olympus. But for the most part, you're going to see that stuff come in the future. We're definitely working on more menu classes and things of that nature, which is good news. So over here to A, what I do is I just start scrolling and I start changing the things that I think I'm going to want on my camera. So the A is the autofocus mode, right? It's all your different autofocus settings. A lot of these I leave until later. I personally, in my 1 series, I do turn on the autofocus plus manual focus. And if you know what focus peaking is, and I can show you this later, it just allows me to focus automatically, autofocus, and then touch up my focus with peaking. So it's a pretty cool feature. So I do turn that on in the 1 series. I believe it's also available on the EM5 III, just in single autofocus. So I just kind of scroll down here. Again, I leave all of my settings for these different areas, focus areas and things of that nature, because I'm just interested right now in setting the camera up. So over here in A3, you have Autofocus Illuminator. That's something that's usually on. I turn it off. That's a personal choice. A lot of these are going to be personal. But I turn that off. That's something I turn off. What that is your orange light on the front of the camera. So if you're ever in a dark area, you're at a wedding reception or what have you, and you go to shoot a picture of somebody and this orange light shoots out, lights up their face. That's always bothered me. I like when my camera is silent and there's no light going on. So I turn that off. But if it doesn't bother you, it is an illuminator that helps to focus. So it is something that's a personal preference that I do turn off. By the way, you guys, when you turn the camera on and you first get into the menu, you might see this box pop up. Let me see if I can get it to pop up here. Hold on a second. All right, that one right there. And you're trying to scroll through the menu and this box just kind of follows you, right? And what is that box? Well, it's giving you information on whatever it is that you're on. So autofocus limiter, it's telling me what it does. I go down to illuminator, there you go. It tells me it's an LED that makes autofocusing easier. So it's just basically information. If you want to get rid of that, which I do, because to me, it's in my way. I'm trying to get to things and it's in my way. Press the info button, it goes away. You press the info button again and it comes back. So just press info and it gets rid of that box when you first turn the camera on that does this. So if it annoys you, just go ahead and shut that off. So my illuminator, I shut that off. I head down a little further. Now I turn on under A4 manual focus or MF assist. I turn on my focus peaking. That's definitely something that, let me see. We can't see the first line item to the far right as the camera's blocking. Which one is the first line item you're not seeing to the far right? I'm trying to imagine that. Let's see. Operative.
Looks like
what are you not
your
seeing?
maybe it's your picture in picture up there on the right hand corner.
Oh, is it the picture in picture you're not seeing?
I'm not sure if that there's something behind there. I don't know if that's what they're speaking of.
So it's not what I'm actually showing on the picture.
No, it's the oops.
And it's not my menu, right? You can see the whole menu.
There now we can.
Or is it because the picture's in the way? I got you.
Yeah.
Picture in picture's in the way. Like in other words, you're talking about speed right there.
Speed, I guess.
Gotcha. Okay. All right.
Is that what you were speaking of? Not sure here. The starry sky is on off. Okay.
All right, gotcha. Yeah, starry sky is set for speed on mine. That's just on the EM13. So again, it's not something that I worry about when I'm starting out with the camera. Actually, I should have done a full reset on the camera to show you guys that. But I don't worry about starry sky. I don't worry about all that stuff until after. Again, those are functions where, you know, I think it's more like, again, personal preference. It's stuff you're going to set later on. In other words, if I'm going to set my bracketing modes, if I'm going to set my starry sky autofocus, I'm going to set my live ND, all of that stuff I'm going to set later on when I get more into shooting. But when I first get the camera, I just want to go through and get the basic setup done. So I'm not going to worry about things like starry sky or any of that, but I will turn on my manual focus assist and I'll turn on my peaking. That's something that I turn on. And the reason for that is, you know, I personally don't care for magnify. Again, a lot of people love that, but I would rather put magnify on a function button, and I can show you how to use the function button soon. But the peaking is something I use all the time, and peaking is where I use it in red, and it's where you manually focus the camera, and whatever highlights in my situation in red is in focus. And so I find it a very useful feature. So I do turn that on my cameras. Again, I leave all of this other stuff. Now, button function, B1, there's an easy way to get to that, and that's from your super control panel. I'm gonna have my coffee here. But let's get into that. So button function, this is where you would change. Now, some of the cameras, you're not gonna see the picture of the camera, the graphics of the camera to the left. You're gonna see just what's at the right, and that's okay. This is just showing you on this camera where the buttons are, which is kind of cool. Those are all the buttons on the camera or the grip that you can change to different things. The first thing I do, you guys, and this is me personally, but this little guy here, it's basically the arrow pad that's around your OK button. It's set right there when you turn the camera on. I should have done a reset so everything was the same, but I turned it off. And the reason I turned that off is a lot of my customers, let me show you what it does when it's set where it is out of the box. If it's set where it is out of the box, if I'm moving my finger around the camera and I accidentally hit that button, I'm going to move my focus point. It's an easy way to get your focus point to move. So boom, you move your focus point. So a lot of the customers accidentally shift their focus point. They don't realize their camera's focusing to the left or whatever. So what I do is almost instantly, that's the first thing I shut off. It's not going to affect it if you're changing your menu items and stuff like that. But now when I'm shooting, just everyday shooting, I'm not going to accidentally get into my focus area. So that's something that I do. I turn that off. And all the other button functions are personal preference. That's where, you can change them to, I think there's about 25 different things that you can change these to. So whether you want like a 2x teleconverter on one of your buttons, live ND, I put on my front button on the camera. So there's different things you can do that you can select to change these buttons to. So that's kind of cool. It gives you the option to do that stuff. So that's your button function. Everything else here, I just kind of leave for now. Again, just setting up the camera. And I just keep scrolling until I see the things that I want to change. Again, all of this stuff I leave at factory setting in the beginning until I get to learn the camera, until I understand the camera. I mean, you have different settings, like for instance, your low and high settings. I mean, that's where you can change how many frames per second do I want for max frames per second, whether it's mechanical or high or low, or, you can change all of that. But I leave all of that right to factory for now. It's not something I worry about when I'm setting up the camera. I'm just scrolling through, changing some of this stuff. Live view boost. And again, you're going to see that there. Let's shut off my picture in picture. So live view boost is interesting. In a lot of the cameras on manual shooting, it's actually on. And I turn it off, and it depends on what you're shooting, but let me tell you what live view boost is. Live view boost is if you ever turn your camera into manual on an Olympus camera, and one of the benefits of mirrorless is that you can see your exposure change. You can see it getting darker or lighter or what have you. Live view boost, when it's off or when it's on, I'm sorry, when you're in manual, you don't see the changes take place. So you're changing your shutter speed, your aperture, what have you, and the picture's staying the same. Your scene is staying the same. You're not seeing the dark, the lights, anything. The exposure, it's just not changing. So when you turn it off, you'll see your exposure change in manual. And the reason for live view boost is there's a couple of things. Maybe at night, focusing on the stars, you want to boost and sort of see the scene instead of it being too dark. Maybe you're in a studio shooting a model or a still life and you have strobe lights and you want to be able to focus on that model, and then sort of, you use your lights for the image. So you're sort of keeping that focus on the model. You can kind of compose better and see what the scene looks like. So there's a couple of different, reasons to have that on, but I do turn it off. And I think most of the new cameras, it's off automatically, but just in case. All right, so I go through and leave all of this stuff. Now, peaking settings in D3. Peaking settings, I think on the 10, you don't have anything other than like, I think black and white and red or something like that. Or maybe just black and white. But I use red. I leave it at red. That's where you can change your color. And then I turn it to high intensity. I believe it's normal. I go to high. It just gives me a higher intensity red color. So just to show you guys what I mean by that, let me take off my cap here. If I was to go into manual focus, well, here I'm in single autofocus. Remember I told you I turned on autofocus plus manual focus? So if I focus on that flash and I keep the button pressed down halfway and I turn my focus ring, and let me just bring that picture in picture up again. So I focus on it, keep it held down, I turn my little focus ring, see it highlight red? That's where my focus is right now. So that's focus peaking. Whatever's red is what's in focus. So whether it's the flash or the desk. And that's basically what focus peaking does. So I definitely turn that on. I think it's a great feature. When I do landscape and things of that nature, I love to manually focus. So I make sure that's on, and those are the settings. Histogram, mode guide, I leave all that stuff. Again, this is another personal preference. Turn it off here so you can see it. I turn the sound off. This is your beep or your sound. That's up to you. Again, personally, I like having a very silent camera. I don't like to have a lot of sound and things like that going on. So okay, what I'll try to do at the end for the EM10 users is just plug in the EM10 I have, just to show you how basic the menu is, and I'll go through it really, really quick to show you how much there is less. So that way, instead of trying to discern what the differences are, you'll see that pretty much. So this stuff I pretty much leave. As I get into shooting more, I do change my ISO auto for birding and things like that, but that's something I would do later. Just to tell you what that is, ISO auto set is where you can change your upper and lower limit for default. So my default is 200, I leave it at that. And then the sensor is 200 to 6400. If I'm out in the field, I may not want to go to 64, I might want to go to 32, or keep it at 25. So you can limit how high your ISO will go in auto ISO. That's basically what that is. And so it gives you that limit if you want it. Oh, you also have your lowest shutter speed. So what that does is you can basically go like, 250th or 400th of a second or whatever. And what that's doing is basically saying, okay, until you get to that shutter speed, I'm not going to crank up that ISO. So it sort of gives you a setting, where you're telling the camera when to start adjusting the ISO. But that's something, I would adjust later on. I just wanted to hit it really quick. Again, I go through all this and I'm pretty much just about done with this menu. Now this one here, G, this is really interesting, and I'm going to take off the picture in picture. So G looks like a little pixel, right? It's kind of like a pixel set. So on the EM13, the EM1X, and I believe the EM53, you don't have to worry about this. But on all the other cameras, the older EM52s and all that stuff, and I will show you, John, how to get to the super control panel after. So we will go into that a little bit. But basically, this little pixel set here, I call it, this is something you want to get into on the other cameras if you shoot JPEG. If I go to the right here, you'll notice this little weird kind of screen. And if you notice next to the large right here, if I go to the right one more time, it says super fine compression. Some of the older cameras are set for fine. And so what happens is when you try to adjust your JPEG, you have, small, medium, fine, or normal, fine, medium, fine, or whatever. I always tell the customers to shoot at the highest resolution you can, right? You can always cut down your resolution on the computer, but you can't always get more, right? More detail. Super fine, which is right here, is one of the least compressed JPEGs in the industry. It's a very it's a good detail JPEG when you're shooting JPEGs. It takes up more room on your card, of course, but it gives you a lot more detail. So on those cameras, if you go into this menu and you turn it to superfine and then press OK, you'll find that when I show you the super control panel, you'll find that you have the ability to see superfine and change it to superfine. So it just gives you less compressed JPEG. So I make sure on a lot of the cameras that that's set to superfine. Card slot settings, you might want to, shift if you're shooting an EM1 series where you have dual card slots. It just allows you to change, where you're saving your images and all that stuff, how you want it to save. Do you want video on one card, stills on the other, vice versa. So just different ways to save. So I leave all this. Info settings, the Evf Auto Switch, it's all personal preference how you want to see this stuff. Now you'll notice that some of this stuff is grayed out, and that's because I can't show it when I'm plugged in with the HDMI cord. So I can't show bracketing, I can't show this stuff. But your EVF, style and things like that, it's what you're seeing, the information you're seeing in your viewfinder. This is really, again, personal preference, something you can look at in the manual and you can check out and see what kind of view you like, or you can play with it and check it out and see what you like. I leave it, pretty much factory. I don't worry about it too much. All right, so that's pretty much the menu there. And that's mostly what I change in the menu. If you have a EM5 Mark II, the quick sleep mode is actually on. So I know it's gray right there above certification. I turned it off, the quick sleep mode. When I started with Olympus, that was the first camera I learned on, and I thought my camera was broken because basically it kept shutting off on me. But the fact was that the quick sleep mode was on, and so it was shutting off to reserve battery power. But nobody knows that when they buy the camera. I think the original design was, hey, if I'm in a store selling cameras, and as an example, and I end up forgetting to turn the camera off and put it back on the shelf, it's going to save battery power. But when a customer buys a camera and brings it home and we go to set it up, we don't realize quick sleep mode's on. So I would shut that off and leave that. Somebody's asking about the settings. Is that the EVF you're talking about? Why there's 4 on settings? Why are there 4 on set? Why are there 4? Let me see a couple of these questions here just to see where I'm at. Adjusting the white balance. Roger, I leave my white balance. I'll get into that in the super control panel. And I'll show you how to do it a lot quicker than doing it in the menu. And that's the thing. There's so many things in the menu that are in the super control panel. And that's why I'm going to show you that. Let's see. We'll change in the dial between PASM. Will the menu change on the super control panel? No, it stays the same on the super control panel. But you can definitely change a few things on there, and I'll show you that in a minute. Why are there so many different things here, like EVF adjust, EVF style, just different things that you can adjust, like auto switch is where you might want it to switch when you look into the viewfinder, like mine is set up for it. That's why I keep blacking out when I go close to it. Or yeah, keep going here and it knocks it out, right? Or you might want to have that where that doesn't happen, it stays on. You might want to change the way it looks on the inside. So each one is a different menu to different things that you can change in there. And that's all in your manual too. You'll see the images and stuff. And if you guys want something that's a little easier than the manual to follow, there's Rocky Nook. That's the publisher, and they have some great books like Rocky Nook Mastering the EM1 Mark III. There's things like Rocky Nook makes stuff like this here. This is a pocket guide to mastering, the Mark III, or they have them for all the cameras pretty much. And I'm sure Kenmore can get these for sure. The Rocky Nook books and stuff. So, it's great stuff to have. Somebody gifted me that one, by the way, on accident, so I took it. All right, then you have your setup menu. And this is basically where you would set up your card and things like that. Like for instance, you put a memory card in the camera. Let me shut the picture-in-picture. And you might want to format the card, right? Or erase everything on the card. Now, remember, when you format the card, you're getting rid of everything. You're done. So a lot of people format their cards when they first put them in. There's nothing on the memory card. That way it's set up for the camera. Or if they already shoot the card, they might want to just erase the images. But that's where you do that. I don't personally do any of that. So that's a habit I have. It's a bad habit maybe, but I have almost every memory card from the last 21 years. So I'm sure a lot of them, like the Hitachi micro drives, are probably going to die at some time soon. It's a bad habit, but I have Altoids boxes and everything filled with memory cards with good and bad pictures and everything. It's awful. It's one of those, it's like a pet peeve. It's like something I have that's a definite problem. So, and then you have your settings for your time, your time and date and all that, whether it's English or, Japanese or what have you. Now, what you're going to see is here, record view or whatever that stands for is going to probably be set at 0.5 when you get the camera. Now, what that is basically, let me see if this will work here. If it's at 0.5, this is what happens. I take a picture and it pops up on the screen for half a second. It's not working really with the camera plugged in, but basically it's like we always used to have that on point and shoots back in the day, right? You take a picture, it pops up on the screen and you can review it. I personally shut that off. That is something I shut off. And the reason for that is I always want the camera ready. Now you can still press the shutter button halfway and it'll shut off a picture that's showing. But I always figure if I want to see what I just shot, I'll just press playback. I don't care if it pops up right after I shoot, but I have a lot of people that I've helped with the cameras that love to have the picture pop up. And so again, it's a personal preference. I leave the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth settings where they're at. And the firmware is basically where you can check your lens and body firmware to see if you're up to date on the latest firmware. So that's where you check that stuff. All right, let me check the questions, and then I'm going to get into some of the other menus here. Yes, that was a Rocky Nook. So NOOK is the publisher. It's right here. Let me see if I can bring it up to the screen here. There you go. Rocky Nook. Gotta love that 12 to 40. All right. All right, so I just want to answer a question here. I can't get my super control panel to be active. All the icons are white instead of green. True for EVF. Only EVF shows the super control panel full screen. Interesting. I don't know why that's happening. You might want to reset the camera. That's a good time to maybe reset the camera and get it back to your original settings. Just go ahead and do like a full reset, and then just reset all of your settings and stuff. But basically, let's get into that a little bit. That's a good segue into the super control panel. EM53, off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you what the newest firmware is, but Stephen, but what you can do is you can go to the website under support. You can go to the camera. You can actually look up your exact camera and you can check out what the firmware is. Or if you go to Olympus Workspace and bring up the firmware software, plug your camera right in, it'll tell you. I mean, it'll tell you if you need an upgrade and all that. But I can't remember off the top of my head if we're at like 1.2 or 1.3 or something along those lines. I can't remember. Too many of them for me to keep track of. There's only a few cameras, but it's a hard time for me. All right, so let's talk about the super control panel. Now, the super control panel is a quick menu. I call it the OK menu, and the reason for that is if you press OK on the camera, pretty much when it's in PAS or M, right? Program, aperture priority, shutter priority, or manual on your control dial. If I press OK, it brings up this menu right here. Now, there's other ways to see it. I mean, you can pretty much press your monitor button and you can set it up so that, basically you have the super control panel showing all the time or things of that nature. That might be what's going on with your camera over there as well. But I have the eye sensor connected. It's just the way I shoot. So basically, if I put my finger in front of the eye sensor, there goes my menu. But what I wanted to show was on the EM10 Mark III and Mark IV, it's a little bit different. On the 10 Mark III and 4, you actually have a button on the top of the camera. And let me let that focus a little bit. You have a button on top of the camera next to the on-off button. It's this button right here. It looks like a little rewind button. It's got an arrow and a box. And if you're in program, aperture, shutter priority or what have you on the 10.4, you want to press that button to bring up the super control panel. It's almost like an OK button when you're in those modes. So if I bring that up and I press that button, it brings up the super control panel. A little bit different, but otherwise it's the same menu and everything. It's just a little bit different the way that they set it up in the camera. So super control panel is actually very cool because a lot of the things I skipped over on the menu are in here. You can change your ISO in the super control panel. There's a couple ways to move around. You can highlight it. I use the arrow pad around the OK button. You can highlight it. You can touch screen. You can touch it. Well, I can't right now because I'm plugged in, but you can touch where you want to change. I use the arrow pad. I'm usually taking my time when I'm changing my menu. You can use the front dial on the camera to change the settings, like my ISO right there. Or you can just hit OK and then use your arrow pad, or your dials. So there's a couple ways to get around. It's whatever is more comfortable for you. I personally just press OK, use the arrow pad. It just makes it nice and easy. But you can see in here that you have ISO. We talked about the white balance. I said I'd bring that up, Stephen, right? I said I bring up the white balance. So here's a great way to change your white balance nice and easy, doing it from the super control panel. That way you don't have to always hit that menu button. You just go right into here and it's a quick menu. I leave mine on auto most of the time, but you can do, anything from sunny to cloudy to tungsten, incandescent, fluorescent, underwater. Obviously the camera's not waterproof, it's water resistant. But if you put it in a housing, you can go underwater. So don't let that fool you. You have flash white balance, you have capture, which is like a custom white balance. where you can basically shoot like, a piece of paper or a card or whatever you're doing. And you also can change by pressing info here. You can change the Kelvin, the temperature, manually on the camera. So it's another way to do that. So for me, most of the time I'm in auto, only because, one, I'm shooting raw, and two, I'm not too worried about it. I think it's fairly accurate nowadays on the cameras, but nothing beats, custom when you're shooting portraits and stuff, of course. But I have a habit of using auto. You can also get to your focus points, how you want to change them, maybe using the front dial. And then also, just the ability to change them right there. So this super control panel has a lot of power to it. You can change your focus, whether you want single autofocus or continuous or manual, or in this camera, you have starry sky, right? So you can change that. Face detection, you saw that in the, might have seen that in the menu. You could change it right here. So if I want it off or if I want it on, I can go ahead and change it right here in the super control panel, as well as my metering. So a lot of this stuff you saw in that other menu, but again, these are things you might change more, and you don't need to get into that big menu and get confused. Just change them right here. Your metering, whether you want spot, center weighted, ESP, your shooting menu, single shot, right? Silent, high speed, low speed, all right here.
Hey, Mike.
Yep.
Somebody was asking if there's a way to get the super control panel to stay visible longer, like it times out really quickly for her.
Mark II, I haven't used in a couple of years, but it should be similar. Let's see, disappears very quick when you're trying to figure it out. Are you putting your finger in front of the in front of it by any chance? There's two reasons for that, probably. One, if you're set up, let me see here if I could figure it out. I gotta get out of that. Nope. Yep. For your Evf Auto Switch, if you're set up for the eye sensor, that could be part of it. Because again, if I'm in the super control panel and I have my finger, I'm going to change something. If I have my finger in front of the viewfinder where that little sensor is, it's going to knock that right out. That could be one. Two, let me just go in there again, because you can change that to, let's see, enable the eye sensor when the monitor is closed. Okay, let's do that. So on 2, it's only going to go to the EVF now when I have my monitor closed, right? It's going to go to the EVF. So theoretically, it shouldn't do that now. See that? So now it's going to stay up as long as I have it up. So the other thing is, that said, when you go into your menu now, see how it just popped off there? It's only going to stay up for so many seconds, but it looks like you get it up there for a pretty good amount of time. Now, there's another way to do it as well. So it stays up for a few seconds. There's another way to get it up as well, and I don't know if it's in the monitor setup or if it's in the menu. Let me find out. Disable it, EMF only, enable the eye sensor, blah, blah, blah. Okay, let me see if it's off, if that does it. And I'm not going to be able to do it on here. There is a way to just show your super control panel. It's not something that I like to do. Let me see if it's off that does it. Nope, it's not off. So you have to go into your menu to do it, but you can actually set it up where just the super control panel shows up on your screen on the back. I mean, I don't personally like that because I want to see what I'm shooting sometimes, but there is a way to do that as well. But I would check how long you have your sleep mode set for, or your automatic shut off. And then also just check that viewfinder setting to see what you're set at, for that. But it could be that you want that off, if it's bothering you. All right, so let's do this again here. Got that set? Nope. Okay, you have your image stabilizer. There's definitely things in here that you could change quickly that you could have done in the big menu, but it's a lot easier. Aspect ratio, your color. You saw that in shooting menu 1. You could change your color from natural to, vivid to monochrome to art modes, whatever you want there. So definitely there's a couple of ways in the camera to change these things. But this stuff here is most of the stuff you're ever going to want to change. Now, if you have this little icon in the bottom right corner, and some cameras have it and some don't, a lot of the newer ones have it, that's your button function. See that up in the left, it says button function. So if I press that, it brings me right to the menu where I could change those buttons, right? It's like a quick menu. Same thing with any of these. If I go to, I don't know, let me go to, trying to think of another one where it brings you right into, the menu that you would see. typically when you go into the main menu, but a lot of them are little shortcuts. So that's kind of a way to do that. Something I want to show you guys is, hold on, let me just check this. If time permits, go over how to update firmware. Yeah, I'm probably not going to be able to do that because I have to turn on, just because I'm not thinking about it, I have to turn on to do the firmware update. I'd have to turn on Olympus Workspace, share my screen, plug in my cord. I don't have, I'd have to grab a cord, plug it in. So I wasn't set up for that. It would take too much time for me to set it up, though it is easy to do and doesn't take that much time. But basically, the basics of doing the firmware, I could tell you what it is. Basically, what you do to update the firmware, you go to Olympus Workspace, right? That's a free software you download from our support section on our website. You plug your camera in with the USB cable that was given to you with the camera. That's very important. The reason that's important is you can't just plug in, let's say you lose the cable and you have a hard drive and it has a USB-C as an example. You plug it in and it doesn't work. The update's not working. And that's because it's not a fast enough cable. So you can use a third-party cable. You just got to make sure it's fast enough to transfer all that data via Wi-Fi. So the cable that comes with the camera definitely has the speed. So you plug your camera in into your computer, you turn it on. The back of the camera is going to bring up a menu and it's going to say a few things like storage. It's going to say USB. It's going to say a bunch of stuff. You want to hit OK when you highlight storage, which should be the first thing that's already highlighted. Once you do that, the camera's ready to go. You go into, I believe it's camera up in the top menu on Workspace, and it'll say update camera. You go to that and it'll proceed to read the camera and it'll bring up what firmware you have and if there's another firmware that needs to be added. You just highlight that and you walk through it. And then what you have to do to walk through it is you have to wait until everything's downloaded, and then it'll ask you if you're ready to download it to the camera, which you say yes and apply and all that stuff. It walks you through pretty much. But the idea is, depending on your Wi-Fi, and depending on how big the update is, it could take a minute or it could take 5 minutes. It could take 10 minutes if it's a huge update and you have bad Wi-Fi. I mean, it just wait, let it go through. 99% of the time, it's flawless. You know, obviously there can be issues here and there, but for the most part, it's fairly flawless. Okay, is there a timer setup available for HDR mode or high-res pic mode? I tried to take a family picture in high-res or HDR, but there's no countdown timer for that. Yeah, there might not be. That's not something that I've tried. It's a good question. And the thing is, I can't get into HDR. You know what? I can get HDR on this camera. I can look really quick. But the question is that when you're in a mode like HDR, can you still use a timer? Not quite related to the menu class, but that's okay. So I'm in, I'm not in HDR right now. Why did it not bring up? Oh yeah, I'm in HDR. Oh yeah, no, you can't. And you know why? So the reason why is because when you're in HDR mode, you're basically putting yourself in a high speed mode. Okay, so in other words, let me go into the OK menu here, the super control panel. When I go to HDR, I'm taking a series of shots, right? So it puts me in a sequential mode. So the camera looks like that on the back, you know, high speed sequential. And that's the same area where you'd put your timer on, right? So you can't do both. And because HDR is set up as a, you know, as a mode where it's going to do multiple shooting, it's not going to allow you to do both. So one of the ways around that is you'd have to get an intervalometer. You'd have to get a remote that has an intervalometer attached to it where you can do continuous, or you could do a timer, you know, basically on there. So you'd almost have to do that and get a separate remote. Yeah, that's kind of tough. That's a tough one. But only because HDR is a setting. You might be able to, nah, wouldn't be able to bracket either, I don't think. So yeah, no, good question, but no, I don't believe you can do that. All right, so back to the super control panel. There is something I want to show you guys, something a little different. How do you increase the size of the autofocus point? I tried turning the front dial on my 5 Series 2 with no luck. Yes, okay, Joe, the 5.2 is a little bit different than the other cameras. I'll address this quick and then I'll show you guys a couple of things that you may or may not have known about your camera quick, and then we'll be done. All right, so when you get into this screen right here, Joe, yours is a little different than mine. I can use the front dial or the rear dial to change the size of my focus points, right? Or how many, I should say. Okay, I can use the rear dial, do the same thing. And if you look to the left on the screen, you'll see what focus mode I'm in. See it changing there? And you'll see underneath that the two dials. It shows an image of the two dials telling me that I can change that by using the two dials. On your 5.2, that left-hand side of the screen should show the up and down arrows. And what you have to do is actually, if I remember right, you have to go to the left and highlight that screen. You have to go to the left all the way. I believe you have to go to the left, or you have to hit info. It might be info you have to hit. When you hit info, it brings you over to that screen on the left and use the up and down arrows, I believe. And that changes your focus points. So it's a little different on the EM5 but you should be able to do that. Yes, I think you're right, Carol. If you turn off live view, the super control panel stays on, right, in the menu. I believe you're right. So, so in the menu, it would be, it's not live view boost, it's live view, I believe. I think you're right. Let's see if I can find it quick. So somebody had the question before of on the EM5 of constantly losing their super control panel. And I was saying how there is a way to have it show up all the time on the screen. And I think you're right, Carol. I think it is. And isn't it in one of these settings? Yeah, live control, maybe live super control panel. Do I want to get rid of that? Is that what it is? I don't think so. I don't know if it'll work. You know what? And it might not work. Actually, I shouldn't have done that because it's not going to work on this because I'm plugged in, but it would be on the other camera. Really quick, I'll just go through that and see if that works, because I think it's one of those. So you're absolutely right. It is a setting in here, and I haven't done it in a little while. So bear with me, and I apologize, you guys. But if I shut that off, there's a way to do that. It's not that. Yeah, it'd take me a little while to find this, you guys, but there is a way to do that. And live view mode, live view COSA, frame rate, grid settings, histogram, mode guide, self-adjust, auto set. It's going to be on my my monitor settings, I believe. So let me just blow through this quick just to see. Grid, close up, info, picture mode settings. Yeah, I'd have to go through it. It's something I should know right off the top of my head, but I haven't done it in a while. And so I don't know off the top of my head, but it's something that definitely we can look at. You'd look at in the manual and you'd find it. I mean, it's right there, but it's a way to show that super control panel all the time. And shame on me because I should know it, but I just haven't done that in so long that I forget exactly where it's at. So it's something I want to show you guys that's a little bit different, is something that's basic with the camera really quick. I just want to go through that you may or may not notice when you're shooting. Let me just go through some of the questions quick and then I'll show you this. Face detection icon is off. How do I turn it on? When I move the pointer to that icon, it won't turn on. So the face detection, I just go right into the super control panel, boom, turn it on. If your face detection is not turning on, then you have something set that won't let you do it. For instance, you might be in high speed mode. And I don't believe you can still do it in high speed, but like HDR, I don't think you can do it. There's certain modes where you can't do face detection. So just check and see what mode you're in. And there's certain ones that won't let you do it. So they're maybe not portrait type modes or what have you, so they won't let you do it. So just check on that and you should be okay. Gradation normal. To the right is super control panel. Yeah, so all of this stuff to the right on the super control panel, all of this stuff here is basically, it's your JPEG, right? It's adjusting for your JPEG. So I'm in natural color. I can adjust my sharpness. I can adjust my contrast, my gradation, which is basically like, what is gradation? It's like your, shadow adjustment. So it's like, so it's your highlight the shadow detail, just in normal. That's where it's set factory or whatever. Saturation, obviously, set at 0. Everything's at 0. These are empty because if you go into monochrome, you can adjust now shadow, highlight, contrast. You can adjust if you want a color filter or a monochrome filter, you want green, yellow, red, or what have you. So those are just adjustments for that. But just remember that those adjustments only work with JPEG. So you can shoot with those adjustments and you'll see them in the screen, But if you're shooting in RAW, you're not going to see those till you do something after in your editor. So it's a great way to shoot JPEG in RAW, or just shoot in JPEG and set up a certain type of shot. Or let's say you have a black and white mode and you want to set like a green filter and things like that, and then move it to a custom function. It's a great way to set up a JPEG for that. Just toggle from live view to EVF with a button on the back. Yeah, that's what I thought, but it wasn't allowing me to do that with this this button. Maybe because I'm plugged in too. So that could be. Sometimes when I'm plugged in, I'm a little limited on the things I can show and do, unfortunately. But what I wanted to show you guys really quick, because we're almost done here, was that when you're in the shooting mode on the camera, I'm in manual right now on my top dial. And I want you to notice that on the back screen, I have two things that are highlighted in yellow, my shutter speed and my aperture. And that's because those are what I can change. So in other words, my rear dial is changing my shutter speed, right? The front dial is changing my aperture. Now, if I was to move the camera to shutter priority, all of a sudden my f-stop remains the same. It's white. But with the rear dial, I could change my shutter speed. And with the front dial, notice that the exposure compensation now is highlighted to the right. So I can change the exposure comp. Aperture priority is the same thing, except now my aperture highlights yellow because I could change my aperture with the rear dial and the exposure comp with the front. So kind of simple, but it's kind of cool. They have this color coding. In program, I can't change anything, but I could change my exposure comp. So it's this color coding to show you what can be changed when you're in that mode on the mode dial. I thought that was kind of interesting. Also, your info button is your friend. So on the back of the screen, I have a histogram. You can barely see it because I have the cap on. If I take that off, you get to see my wonderful office here, but there's your histogram. Now, if I hit info, now I have my level, but I still have a lot of information. Again, it's info, right? Information. Hit it again, and I have just the information. And then I have nothing. I hit it again, I'm back to my histogram. So your info button is your friend. I mean, that's what gives you all your information when you're shooting. So remember that. And yeah, if you want to set really quickly, if you want to set a custom function, I can show you, but it looks like we got some questions. So I'm going to just jump into the questions, you guys, here and see if I can answer those. So let's see. I'm just looking at the questions, bear with me. Yeah, spot metering on the face priority dropped off. Mark, that's Mark. When I had spot metering on the face priority dropped off. Is face priority only available with other metering modes? It could be. It could be that the face priority is definitely linked to that. Let me see if I go to spot. Yeah, it's not letting me get into my metering modes for my face. So yeah, it looks like the face detection is working with center weighted and it's working with your ESP. So yeah, so that's one of the things where it limits you on your face detection. That's one. Thanks for catching that there. And let's see. Okay. Andrew, the rapid sleep mode on the OMD M1 is back in that main menu. Again, it's just over in your gear menu, and just scroll all the way down and you'll start seeing the sleep modes. And I believe they were towards the bottom here. So you're looking at, let's see, I'm in A again. Right here, you're looking at like J2, where you could change your sleep modes there. Firmware, do I have firmware update firmware release in sequence, or can I update the latest firmware? No, just do the latest firmware. So you don't have to do them in sequence. You could just go in, and if you haven't updated the camera at all, let's say you're on firmware number 4 and you're on 1.1, you can go ahead and update right to the newest one. It's like having a new camera at that point. Live view button 2, when I turn the camera on, menu seems to be permanently on. Yeah, so Matt, that's what I was trying to show somebody else. Yeah, that's one of your menu functions where you can have the live view on all the time, or you can change that. And I thought it was with the monitor button, but I guess it's not, or maybe because I'm plugged in. It's not an antique, the original EM1. Okay, so the EM1 though, yes, Matt, it's a little different on the EM1 original. And you're going to date me. I got to go back again. But in the gear menu, you can shut off You either turn on live SCP, which is live super control panel like I had on here. If you turn that on, I believe you can change it so that you can see the screen, see what you're seeing through the viewfinder in the back, and then press that OK button to get the super control panel. So even though your camera is a quote antique, you can still see exactly what the new cameras see. But the EM1 original, I believe, out of the box gave you the super control panel showing up permanently on the back, but you could change that. Let's see. Yes, Carl, thank you. I'm learning on a 10 Mark III. Will the lens I have be okay when I upgrade? Yeah, your 10-3 Sue is a great little camera. My daughter shoots that camera. The nice thing about the Olympus cameras is that your mount is the same throughout the whole line. So any of your lenses are going to fit on any of the cameras in the line, which is very good. So you're able to do that for sure. All right, let me go through. I'm getting some questions here. Hoping I don't miss anybody. I'm trying to scroll through, but I feel like I'm going to miss somebody here. Monitor setting EM5. Can custom settings be used to get back to your personal chosen default settings? Custom settings are a little different, Arthur, but yes, your chosen default settings. That's correct. Yes, the custom settings are a little different. So yeah, let's say birds in flight. I might set up birds in flight on my camera, and I might have it set for manual, 2500 IS shutter speed, auto ISO, f5.6. Let's say as an example, 10 frames a second, right? Whenever I go into custom one for that birds in flight setting, I'm always going to be auto ISO, manual, 10 frames a second, what have you. I can always change that while I'm shooting, except for the manual, because I can't change that mode dial because I'm already in custom one. But I could change my auto ISO, I could put 200, I could do all that stuff. And then when I get out of custom one and go back into it, you're right, I'm back at those default settings that I set originally. So custom functions are a great way to set certain things. I use them for pro capture. I use them for in the EM1X, the AI bird focusing, things of that nature, maybe a black and white mode, stuff like that. So definitely some cool stuff. All right. By default. Okay, cool. Thank you. Can the Olympus lenses for my old film camera work with the OMD line? Yes. Your old film camera had the F-Suico lenses, and you have to buy an adapter, Stuart. And I have one here. Like this is an old adapter from Metabones that I have, and that's an OM to a micro four thirds. So you just need to buy an adapter like this. And what it'll do is it'll give you the ability to mount your old lens here and then mount this to the camera. Now, what that does right here is this adapter, it gives you the flange distance between the sensor and the lens, so that's correct. And that's what the thickness of that adapter is. So you can definitely do that. And then what you can do is you can set up focus peaking, set focus peaking up to a function button. And then when you put your old lens on, you can press the button to work with focus peaking. So when you're manually focusing, you'll see things turn like red or what have you. The reason you have to use a function button for that is because even if it's on in the camera, there's no electronic context to the old lenses. So the camera doesn't know there's a lens on theoretically. So you press the button, bring up focus peaking. So you can definitely do that. Heather, I think that's all the questions, or most of them. I think I got to most of them. Probably just missed a bunch of them.
Some people are posting them in the chat, so it's
Oh, okay.
not
Let me go
going
through
to
quick
the,
and see if I can. I'm going to shut down the Q&A and see if I can get to the chat here. Let me see. What do we got here? Cleveland, that's near me. I'm in Cuyahoga Falls. Hello, Cleveland. Okay, I'm just scrolling through now, Heather. Just scrolling through you guys to see if I have any questions in the chat that I can answer. Okay.
more towards the bottom, I think.
Yeah, I'm getting there. Regarding firmware, do you have to be up to date in order, or can you have the latest firmware? No, you can. Yeah, you can. You don't have to do it in order. Okay, I got that one. Rapid sleep mode, got that. Let's see. As soon as you press the shutter button halfway down, brightness level indicator is replaced by the level indicator. Portrait. Okay, thank you. Sorry, you have to go somewhere. Okay. I'm reading everybody's stuff here really quick.
Wow.
but it's okay.
It's generous of you.
Yeah,
There's a
my
lot of stuff in
EM1X,
the
when I'm
chat.
trying to set the camera and the camera moves, the back screen goes blank, or trying to delete photos. Yes, what's happening there, is it Jorge, Eduardo? When you're doing that on your EM1X and you're trying to delete photos, or the back of the camera is, you're losing the screen, it's because of the way the settings are. It's very sensitive right here. This little sensor, I couldn't think of the name. The sensor that's next to your viewfinder is very sensitive. And so what happens is, let me go back to the settings so I could show you. And I don't want to keep you guys too long here, but let's go back here. So enable the eye sensor. Okay. So when I bring my finger up here, the back screen goes off. You can see it on my camera here. The back screen goes off. It brings my viewfinder up. So when I'm in like a menu like this, I lose it, right? If I'm playing back a picture, I lose it. So the way around that is to turn it off. It might be annoying to you because, again, you may not want to, let's see, enable the eye sensor when the monitor's closed, or you can just disable it. And then basically if I disable it, then in order to go to my viewfinder, I press the monitor button and it goes to the viewfinder. If I press it again, it goes to the screen. Now it's not going to shut it off. So it's just a matter of how your monitor button is set. So you can actually adjust that. Let's see. Yes, thank you, Carl. I just, you already told him that, and I'm going through it.
Carl's a rock star in the chat here.
Yes, I see that.
He's giving us lots of info.
A good standard setting for movies. I'd probably, you know what? I don't do a lot of movies, Paul, but to be honest, I mean, most of us don't have 4K screens and all that stuff. So I would probably just use my high def settings, my 1080p settings, and probably, like 60 frames per second, something along those lines, or 30 frames per second. It just depends on how film-like you want it to look, or, things of that nature. But I'd go high def and just let it fly. And it works really well. I mean, and another thing, just so you know, with videos, not to get on a tangent and keep going, but over here on your stabilization, notice you have two. You have movie image stabilizer, that's what the M stands for, and you got image stabilizer. I leave the stabilizer in auto. That's just a personal preference. I've had good luck with it, no matter if I'm panning or whatever. This one here, this one here is just for video. And I leave it in MIS1. That allows you to use your 5-axis stabilizer and your movie stabilizer, which is digital. And what that does is, if I'm taking a movie, let's say I'm shooting myself, I'm doing a vlog, and I got a city behind me and I'm walking around with the camera, you might see some wobble in the corners of the screen, and that digital stabilizer for movie will get rid of that. So I leave both of those on when I'm doing that. But I would probably go in your settings, something like maybe full HD, super fine, 60 frames a second, something like that. And that would be, perfectly fine for just regular everyday, video. It would be fine. Though the cameras will do, 4K and all that stuff. So it's pretty fun. Let's see. Camera has stopped autofocusing. Is that due to a setting, or do I need to reset the factory? Could be a couple things, Pia. If you have one of the pro lenses or one of the premium lenses, it might be that you actually accidentally, let me just show you here. Most of your pro lenses have a clutch, and that clutch gets you to manual focus. Up here is autofocus. You can shut that off in the menu if it bothers you, but it might be that you pulled your lens out of the bag and it's in manual focus. So if you have a clutch lens, push that forward and you should be focusing. If not, then it's definitely in your menu, or maybe reset or something. But that's probably what's going on right there. Yes, replay of this will be available on the Kenmore YouTube channel, and that'll be available in the next few days for sure. Next class, we're probably doing these like monthly, and there's a lot of classes going on the Get Olympus page. We definitely have some stuff going on with our ambassadors, and so if you go to the Learn Center on the Olympus webpage, you'll see, I think it's under, next to support, I think it's called Inspiration, maybe. Click on that and go to the Learn Center, and there's a whole bunch of stuff there for you guys to check out and learn for the different cameras and everything. So definitely some really cool stuff. And again, I appreciate you guys coming on and hanging out, especially when I go through the questions, because I know it gets a little boring going through these for you guys. So let's see. By default, the spot meter field is linked to the active autofocus field. If you disable this, you get a central spot metering circle and face detection is possible. Okay, so when your face detection is not linked, or your spot metering is not linked to the single autofocus point, you can get your face detection back. Thank you very much, Carl. You're a rock star, man.
Carl is actually a
You know?
visionary from Australia.
Oh, nice, nice.
Yeah.
See, I'm like techie, but not super techie. I use the cameras, and so I'm good enough to tell you what I do and how I shoot them. But when it comes to some of the really detailed stuff, I just go, you know what? It's too much for me. So, all right. As long as you guys learn something about the cameras, I'm good. I'm really good. Because there's so much information on these classes that if you walk away with a couple of things, you know, you're good to go. Best settings to get best focus in a low light room. Again, David, you can use that autofocus assist beam, or if you're using a flash, usually there's an autofocus assist light on the front of those. You know, maybe using the live view boost again, where you turn on live view boost so that you can kind of see what your composition is. That might be a best way to do it. And also use focus peaking, you know, maybe just use manual focus at times. So there's a few different ways that you can do that. That's awesome, man. Well, thank you very much, Carl. I love that.
Yes, Carl
He is a
is
rock
from
star.
Austria,
Yes, learn and
not
support from
Australia.
Olympus. Yes, Austria. Awesome.
I read that
I
wrong.
love it. I love it.
Yes.
I think that's it. Is that it? Let's see.
I don't see any
That's pretty much
fresh
it.
ones.
Yeah, Mark II, learning my way around it. Yeah, I mean, definitely these little Rocky Nook books are cool. There's definitely a lot of cool stuff out there. The learn and support is really good worldwide. I mean, we're definitely working a lot more worldwide with each other at Olympus. So we're working on getting you a lot of, you know, great educational things from our visionaries, from us, from, you know, everybody around the globe. So you're going to see a lot of that education build. And it will be mostly, you know, online education where you guys can grab this stuff for free and learn your cameras, you know, so you can go out and enjoy them. Because the key with these cameras is that once they become an extension of your hand, there's nothing like it, right? Because you're shooting and you're not worried about changing anything on the camera. You can get into some of these modes, these computational features like Live ND and all that stuff without having to even second guess. And so I know it does get a little confusing and I jump around a little bit doing this kind of a class, but it's much easier to do it interactive and do my best to answer the questions for you guys. So hopefully, you know, it helped out and got you guys rocking a little bit. I know I went over a little bit, but yeah, I think we're good, Heather. So again, thank you guys for attending and thank you very much and for supporting us. Make sure you check out Kenmore Camera for all your photographic needs. And yeah, I'll see you on the next one for sure. Absolutely. So
Yes.
yeah.
Thank you. I was going to drop the YouTube channel in there, but you can go on our website and see it. It's scroll to the bottom on the front page and you'll see the little icons, social icons.
Great.
You'll find it in there. And hopefully by tomorrow, we will have that uploaded. So thank you, Mike. That was great. A lot of good
Yeah, you're welcome.
information. You went through a whole lot of stuff in a very short period of time.
It's a lot. I definitely jump around for sure. Yeah. Yeah. But, you know, there's a lot of things. And so again, if somebody just gets a little bit, you know, if I can't answer a question, I apologize. But, you know, if they can get a little bit of insight and it helps them out a little, it's worth it.
Yeah.
So
get them started. So
for sure. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. And thank you everyone for joining us. And Carl from Austria.
Yes. Thank you, Carl.
Thank you, Carl. You answered a lot of questions in there for everybody. So
that's awesome.
Anyway, thank you, everybody. Have a great week. And we're going to sign off. So thank you, Mike.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
All right. Bye.
See ya.